light is bright. I guess I haven't done this since we got that. Well, good morning, everyone. And welcome to anybody who's watching with us online. I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, or as merry as it could be. After I was asked to speak today, I got to thinking about what I wanted to speak on. And as I thought more and more, I just came to the conclusion that we're doing Christmas today. It's only 2 days past Christmas. We're doing it. It's a topic we all know, and every preacher has covered it at some point fairly thoroughly. But what is it about Christmas that draws us in and holds us close? What is it that keeps the magic for us, or what does it mean for us? I guess that's a good question. Some people say it's simply commercialism mixed with a nice hefty dose of nostalgia that keeps us coming back for more. One of the best Christmas specials ever, at least in my opinion, gives us a different answer. When a depressed and distraught Charlie Brown asks the famous question, "Can anybody tell me what Christmas is all about?" his good buddy Linus steps up to the plate. He then recites part of Luke 2 and the true reason for Christmas. And before we really get going, I'm going to read that plus a little bit more of Luke for us. I'm going to read Luke 2, verses 1 through 20, and I'm going to read it out of the King James Version. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went out to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And when she brought forth her firstborn, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which has come to pass, which the Lord hath made known to us. And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph and the babe, lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told to them concerning this child. And all that heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told unto them. As Linus famously said, this is what Christmas is all about. I'm sure everyone listening knows that, and I could very likely leave it here to be done, just as Linus does. But we're not going to do it. What does Christmas really mean? What is it about this coming of Jesus that helps us out? To understand this, I want us to look at three different aspects. What does the coming of Jesus mean to creation as a whole? What does it mean to humanity as a whole? And what does it mean for us believers specifically? What do I mean by the impact of Christmas on creation? We generally only think about what Jesus has done for us specifically, probably just us personally. But he brought something to the whole of creation. Romans 8:22 says, "We know that the whole of creation has been groaning in labor pains until now." Creation had been groaning. This is what Paul said. Creation, the earth, the animals have been suffering, trying to produce what they were intended to produce from the start. The struggle and groaning wasn't intended as the way things were supposed to be. But because as humans we have a horrible tendency to do exactly the wrong thing that we're not supposed to do, sin has tainted everything around us since Adam and Eve made one mistake. The sins of humans have built up and compounded on each other over and over again, taking a toll. It affects everything. The birth of Jesus started the process of fixing creation as a whole. And although I wish it were already finished, we know that it will not be done finally until Christ comes back that last time. But it has started. Matthew 1:23 says that Jesus would be called Emmanuel, or God with us. And this is a point that we will come back to towards the end. The birth of Christ, the incarnation of God on earth, meant that God was among his creation fully once again. In Genesis, it says that God walked among his creation. After Adam and Eve messed up, they heard him walking through the garden, trying to find them. There was a time when God himself walked among the flowers, the trees, and everything else. Jesus, being God in flesh, allowed this to come back into being. When he came to earth, it began the healing process, just by him simply being here. Then there's the manger scene. We've all heard this before. Jesus sleeps in a manger after he's born. I'm sure most of us know that this is a feeding trough for different animals. Oftentimes found in a stable or a barn, and this is typically what we think of. There's a possibility that this manger is actually in the front room of a house, in a common room that they happen to be crashing in for the night. We don't know. That type of specific doesn't really matter. Not for this. But every nativity scene we've ever looked at has Jesus being surrounded by the animals. Whether he was surrounded or not, by being put in a manger, it shows that Jesus would be close to the animals. God wanted to lower himself even to that level. He lowered himself past us to be close to the animals. That message is clear. He came to be among all creation, to heal it all. And past that, I want to look at what Christmas means to humanity as a whole. The story in Luke 2 is quite interesting in several different ways. How would we expect the birth of a king to look? Would there be a lot of attention everywhere? Well, we see it every time a British royal is born into that family, even here. There are cameras, there's media attention, there's a huge announcement that is proclaimed from the steps outside their residence. People get excited ahead of time. But we don't really get that here with Jesus. Not really. Not to the level that Jesus deserved. We see in verse 7, it says that he was born and was laid in a manger. Full stop. That's it. When we think of the birth of God, of the Son of God, we think that it should be extravagant. There should be more to it. But there's not. It is the opposite of what we think it should be. This is the start of a large reordering of creation that we see throughout Jesus' life and ministry. Things were to be shaken up and turned upside down. What is normally expected in our human terms and thinking is no longer accurate and should not be expected anymore. We do still get a birth announcement for Jesus, but it's very localized and specific to who gets that announcement. Verse 8 starts the story of the angelic choir and the shepherds. What do we think of when we hear the word shepherds? Is it a gentle guy that enjoys spending time with the sheep? Is it just that lowly, gentle person? Whatever we think, if it's along those lines, it's not very accurate. Shepherds would have been this rough and tumble group. Think of a harsh Western you've seen of the rough cowboys, not the nice kind, but the hard ones that fight, they rumble, they tumble. These were not a nice group. They had to, after all, be able to fend off any animal that came after their flock. These guys aren't the ones you want to show up and look at your baby, your newborn, in the nursery. Yet, here they are, looking at Jesus. The only reason most people would say that it even remotely makes sense that they are here is because King David himself was at one point a shepherd. Yet here they are. Because they did not belong is the reason they're included. And what does this mean? It means that we're all welcome to be present with the messages and meaning of Christmas and everything that came after that. If we think we don't deserve it, if we're struggling with our relationship with God, if we're simply suffering too much to attempt to enjoy the holiday, and hope seems lost, Christmas is for us. Even if we don't think we deserve it, or even if we do not want it, it is for the outsiders and the lowly, those in despair. And in a year like this, I'm sure that accounts for most of us than it usually would. But there's more to it than that even. We see more of this reordering if we look at what Matthew says of Jesus as a baby or a toddler. We see there that several wise men come bearing gifts. We always picture 3, because of the amount of gifts. There may be more, again, specifics here, although they're fun to talk about for me at least. They're beside the point, I guess. What it shows us is that people from everywhere would come to see and to know Jesus for who and what he was. For the first time, it would not require you to be born of a certain tribe or nation to be close to God. None of that mattered anymore. To belong, we simply had to be willing to see Jesus. There's not much more comforting than that. To be worthy of the peace and the goodwill that the angels speak of. In verse 14, we simply have to be. And this peace comes in two different parts. The first is what we think of when we hear the word peace. It's the possibility of no hostilities between people or nations. And this is open to all people. This type of peace that allowed the fighting to stop, if only for a short moment on Christmas Day in 1914. 5 months into World War I, both sides laid down their arms for a day so that each could come together and worship Jesus as Lord for who and what he is. The birth of Christ led large amounts of men to lay down their weapons. And it's a fairly safe bet, I think, to say that not all of them were actually believers. Yet they all felt the peace of Christ that day, even if it was just for a day. And the other way this piece of verse 14 plays out leads us into what Christmas means to believers specifically. Peace, in a biblical sense, often means much more than what we think of. It means much more than just a lack of hostilities. It's a sort of peace within ourselves, with our relationship with God, with our surroundings, with everything. It means that everything is at a good state in relationship with each other. It's so much more grand than what we usually think. And it's pretty hard to explain, but if we have felt it, then we know it. Unfortunately, this can come and go, unlike the other type of peace. But it does come to us. What Christmas brings is the hope of that peace. It is the yearly reminder to look at what Jesus would teach and endure on our behalf. Do we still suffer and struggle? Of course, obviously. Before Christmas, the time before Christmas, many people within Christianity celebrate Advent. We don't really do that here, but Advent is the time to think about what Jesus endured for us and what we struggle with in the leading up to the coming of Jesus. But then comes Christmas to give us hope to overcome what we ponder in Advent. Some are struggling and suffering more than others. It's apparent. And it's often silent. For them, for all of us, we have the hope of what God did for us. We may be in pain, but the future is so much brighter than what we have. Christmas reminds us to hold on just a little longer. Romans 8:25 says that to hope in what we haven't seen means that we have to wait patiently. To be patient through a dark night of the soul, through some sort of tribulation, is never easy. Jesus himself even became anxious at the height of his struggle and trouble. But we do have hope. And that manger scene that we've seen so many times in the last couple weeks is a reminder. Christmas means that we have Emmanuel, again, God with us. Throughout the Old Testament, God is said to reside in and could only really be experienced in the temple in Jerusalem. While you knew where to worship him and where to feel his presence, it wasn't always easy. Psalm 42 is from a man who says that he wishes to feel God's presence once again, but for one reason or another finds it impossible to do so. And this leaves him depressed and in despair. We see stories of longing for God when the temple is destroyed. Because of what we celebrate at Christmas, we don't have this problem. God is with us, always. When we struggle, when we're depressed, when we were shut in our homes, not able to leave. When we face a difficult loss, God is with us. We may ask why it happens, because we just don't know. But we do know that God is walking through the fire with us. If we ask why celebrate in a terrible year, this is the reason. If we find it hard to find that Christmas cheer that we have God with us should be celebrated. Christmas Day may already be past, but for many, it's only the third day of Christmas. We still have more to go. And it's never too late to celebrate that God is with us. So let's celebrate that Christmas meeting, even if we don't want to, because God is with us.